Good afternoon, everyone. Special good afternoon to Prime Minister Dr. Rav Gonzalez, Prime Ministers Skerrit and Pear of Dominica and St. Lucia. Good afternoon to to government members of cabinet and senior government officials. Good afternoon as well to Ambassador Fan of the Republic of China on Taiwan, who's with us, members of the media, port staff. Special good afternoon to all the folks who are watching us live, especially in the diaspora, in St. Lucia and also in Dominica. This afternoon, we are honored to have such a profound display of Oecs integration on Vincentian soil in the persons of Prime Minister Philip Pear from St. Lucia and Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit of Dominica, who have joined us and today toured two of our transformative developmental projects, major projects in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Our acute care hospital project, which will really revolutionize healthcare delivery in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that is halfway through completion. And the project site which we're at now, the modern Kingston port, which is basically complete and scheduled for an opening ceremony on Saturday, October 25th. That's this Saturday. I'm Press Officer Macmillan, and I will hold you no longer because I know you'd love to hear from our Prime Ministers. So let me turn you over to Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves.
Thank you very much, Candyman. Philip J. Pierre. The visit was supposed to have taken place yesterday, but the exigencies of the circumstances prompted that we do it today. If they had come yesterday, we would have been in the Northeast. Roosevelt would have been familiar because we gave out 80-something title deeds to persons from the Kalinago and Garifuna community. As you know, there's a strong Kalinago presence in Dominica. And these are people who are affected by volcanic eruptions and other weather events like Elsa and Beryl. And we have other deeds to give out across the country, but that is a big one. And what we did there is that I believe that Roosevelt does some of this too. After, in 2002, the first disaster after we came to office was in Hurricane Lily. And we took the decision to repair people's houses or build them back. And when we do that, we do it free, give them the key. So you get people having $150,000, $200,000 houses when before they had probably a $5,000 or $10,000 house. With very good infrastructure put in. So it makes a big difference. We have to build back better and stronger and lift people. Where we're located here, there used to be vendors. We compensated with vendors and they accommodated elsewhere. And we had a number of persons who had dwellings, places in which they stayed. You imagine when they were valued at $284,000. And we developed somewhere at Lomans and we put them, there are 40-something of them, 47 or 48. And that project cost us $5 million. So anytime we have to move people, we treat them very well. And we have others to move as we have done when we did the airport. It's part of the trademark of labor. That's how we do things. I mentioned the human aspect because that's very important in whatever we do. And to remember that at the end of the day, we are serving people. But the projects are important to serve people because if you don't have them, you don't have the advancement. I'll talk a little bit more about the project a little later, but I think you hear me a lot. I think that important that we get the impressions of Roosevelt and Philip, who are very experienced people. In the case of Roosevelt, he was a minister. You were in your 20s when you were first appointed a minister. Yeah. In the year 2000 for in the constituency of Oecs. You know, one side of my father-in-law family comes from Oecs. So he has to represent Oecs properly because, you know, I mean, though my father-in-law and mother-in-law, father-in-law is gone away from the earthly city in several years now. So I can either go Oecs or I can go up Mount Bruce. You know? And Rosie Douglas, who had gotten Roosevelt Skerritt involved in politics, had told me very, very early that his successor, if he has his way, is going to be Roosevelt Skerritt as Prime Minister. And Rosie became Prime Minister. Well, even before he became Prime Minister, he told me that. Unfortunately, Rosie came to office in February 2000 and died on October the 1st, 2000. And then Pierre Charles, a very good man, his faithful deputy in the Dominica Labour Party, became Prime Minister on Rosie's death, but who died, again, unfortunately, too young, before he was 50, in 2004. So that's when Roosevelt became Prime Minister in 2004 at the age of 31. He was then the youngest Prime Minister in the world, youngest in the world, and became the most eligible bachelor. So if he, I say that too because I don't know whether he paid the people or not, but there was one of these things, rating prime ministers and presidents in the world. He was number 2. I wouldn't tell you where I was down in the pecking order. quite a way bit down in the pecking order, you know. But I believe if Orlando Brewster, my Minister of Housing, the medical doctor, if you're Prime Minister, I believe you'd have been number 1 Roosevelt. You know, I think you'd have people. Well, at least his wife. I have to say this for his wife's sake. She wants to hear that. And Roosevelt and I have worked very, very close together. He's been Prime Minister for 21 years. I'm near 25 years, and we work very close together. He's young enough to be my son because Camilo is 53. How old are you now? 53. See, you see what I mean? So I'm just telling you, so I just want to put this matter into perspective. We're talking human things, you know, in this Labour family. And he's an outstanding leader. And as you know, St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Dominica and Barbados and Belize on October the 1st, within the context of CARICOM, we established movement. We had that before, of course, with the Oecs. And I expect in the not too distant future that St. Lucia will join us, Grenada will join us, others will join us. And we have a certain collegiate spirit in Oecs and also in CARICOM. Philippe, you know, one of the things is this. because he's not brash like some other people and who think that when they open their mouth, that they are God's gift to wisdom, you know. But we have seen it happen so many times that the fellow who tried to denigrate him, you know, who occupies the Tower of Babel, doesn't talk a lot of sense. But Philip Pierre went to St. Mary's College. It's a top school in St. Lucia. That's a school where you have Nobel Prize winners. 2 Nobel Prize winners, Arthur Lewis for economics and Derek Walcott for literature. I don't know where you have any place where you have secondary schools. No place else in the Caribbean a secondary school has produced 2 Nobel Prize winners. And he taught at that school, and he did business and accounting, and just, you know, sometimes I talk about when a fellow in opposition, that you don't, if you're in opposition, you don't just go and go one day a month in Parliament and just draw your $2,000, $3,000, whatever the money is, and you're just lazy, you don't do any work any other time. You don't have any ambition at all. No ambition, absolutely no ambition. Don't know how people could elect others who don't have any ambition. I want to make this point, because as a professional, he worked with audit agency, audit companies, he has a financial control in the private sector and so on. CDB. He worked CDB, different places, but he also, when he was not yet 40 years old, established a consultancy, you know. You have a big grown man who's 64 who go all about and say he's a big, and he get up every morning, you know, he ain't doing no work, you know, just one day. I don't know how people can elect fellas without ambition and lazy and so on. So he was a consultant. So I don't know, feeling in opposition, you just have to just one day a month, you know, and there are 5 days during the time of budget. And at the end of the month, when you can't pay your bills, as a big man, you have to go around scrunting, begging people for money here and there, supporters and so on. It's so degrading. You know what I mean? This sort of behavior. And you want to go and represent people. It's completely out of order. Unacceptable. And I'm giving you the backdrop, and he was, this man you see here, Philip, he has a strength of character. And he's bright and he's organized. And he was a man chosen for the times. The good Lord works in mysterious ways, his wonders to perform. Because he's a unifier and he's a consensus man. So when Prime Minister Chastany at the time decided to pick quarrel with John Compton's widow and also with his daughter, and pick quarrel with Stephenson King, who was his prime minister, and Chastany was in his cabinet, and Richard Frederick was also in the cabinet of Stephenson King. He just war with everybody because he's a consensus builder. And people love him. The Comptons, and they were the founders of the UWP. They went on television the night or two before election, the last election, and said they cannot support Chastany. Stephenson King and Richard Frederick lined up. They said they will run as independent, and Labour supported them, and they won their seats overwhelmingly. He won 13 out of 17 seats, plus, of course, Frederick and Stephenson King was a kind of one-man band. They won their seats, and Stephenson King is a senior minister in his government, and Frederick was assigned a role, a responsibility also in his administration. Because you have to see a leader who emerges at a time for a particular time, and that is how he has emerged. And you know, in the region, there are some right-wing people want to conspire against social democratic and socialist oriented political parties. And if we will have a difference about this or that question, that doesn't matter. Fundamentally, we're on the same, we come from the same advanced social democratic, stable, nationalist, anti-imperialist, regionalist. That's how we are. And that's why we stand shoulder to shoulder with each other. We're defending our patrimony, defending our country, and we own in the future. It's important. Don't sell it out. The right-wing fellas belong to an organization called the CDU, the Caribbean Democratic Union, which is linked to the most right-wing sections of the Republican Party in the United States, and linked also, that body, the Netanyahu Party in Israel is also connected to the International Democratic Union, with which the CDU, the Caribbean Democratic Union, is linked. So I'm giving you signposts, and I just give you the backdrop. But you hear me a lot, but I want to talk about these two men who have done tremendous work in their respective countries and in the Caribbean. But I think I'd like Roosevelt to give his impressions and to see where we are, and to, with the integration movement too. And well, he's wise; he'll know what to talk about.
But thank you very much, Comrade Prime Minister. I want to greet everyone present and those following for this live broadcast. The Prime Minister of St. Lucia and myself decided to come across to St. Vincent and the Grenadines too, because there's so many things happening in the world today, which require consultations and sharing of ideas and perspectives, and how we together can continue to work towards addressing those challenges, because the world requires us more than ever to stay together and to work together. That's the only way we're going to overcome those challenges that are confronting us as individual countries, and of course as a region. And of course we share similar political perspectives and political views on every matter. And of course you're seeing it here manifesting itself in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I mean, what this Prime Minister has done, the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines has done in St. Vincent during his tenure as Prime Minister is exceptional. And one has to take the development in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in context of the challenges that St. Vincent and the Grenadines has faced over the years, from hurricanes to the earthquakes. You're talking about the international financial crisis that lasted for so long. You're talking about the oil crisis. You remember when the oil went up, plus $120, $130 a barrel. You're talking about a pandemic. There's so many, and of course all of these wars and conflicts which are having a direct impact on the way of life and the circumstance of the citizens, and of course the ability of the government to deliver for its people, to be implementing such major projects which are in the view of many people I've spoken to in St. Vincent and Grenadines are transformative in nature. It is something that that everyone, irrespective of where you stand in the political theater, should recognize. One cannot forget that the majority of St. Vincentians, including those who support the government, when the Prime Minister decided that he was going to build an international airport at Argyle, there were many doubting Thomases. including within the Unity Labour Party, because people just couldn't understand and appreciate with regards to the terrain that one could have built an airport there. And I recall myself going there along with President Chavez back in the days to visit the site, and so what, it's not only about the airport is completed, one has to appreciate the vision of the Prime Minister in this and his leadership in all of this, and seeing that ability to overcome those challenges and bringing this project into fruition. And of course, the naysayers, once it is completed, then they said it's going to be a white elephant. But today, there's a need for the expansion of the terminal building because it has outlived its capacity. It's growing. And so when you look at this, at this port, this magnificent port, if I was Trump, I would say big, beautiful port.
Yeah. Yes, a big, beautiful port.
You know,
We have done it bigly.
so I mean, and it speaks to leadership, and of course, not only these physical projects, but the commitment to human development. I mean, if you look back in 2000, before 2000 in St. Vincent, you had about 5 or 6% of students sitting in the CXC having access to the tertiary, to the community college. In 2000, you had about 42 or 43 or 44% of primary school students having access to secondary school. I mean, I'm not from St. Vincent, but I can give you those statistics, and of course, to access university, it was scholarships that were generated by the comrade to go to Cuba or go to Eastern Europe because of political connections. Outside of that, the average Vincentian did not have access to university. You would have had to know somebody in the Ministry of Education and with a particular surname and pedigree to land one of the scholarships. Now, if you go to St. Vincent and Grenadines, in every, not every constituency, every village, every cranny in St. Vincent and Grenadines, you will see university graduates.
Absolutely.
And every one of them, you will recognize that not only the government had a role to play in it, but the Prime Minister himself had a part to play in it. And this is a huge difference that the Prime Minister can take time and to be in touch with almost every single citizen and to find a way of addressing every single citizen's and every family's challenge. Now, you may not be able to address everyone at the same time, but we cannot discount the fact that things happen. And I'm not here talking about politics, I'm talking about governance and development, what the government has done under the leadership of Prime Minister Gonzalez. And when you speak about regional international matters, Dr. Gonzalez's voice is always highly regarded and highly anticipated. And so I believe with the leadership of Prime Minister Gonzalez, we have St. Vincent has gone from leaps and bounds. You were well respected across the globe, and in large measure because of the leadership and the advocacy of Prime Minister Gonzalez. Now, I will tell you, I spent a lot of my time in primary school, in secondary school, following Prime Minister Gonzalez. And so Prime Minister Gonzalez has been from way back in primary and secondary school, along with Rosie Douglas as my political mentors. And of course, George Odlum and Tim Hector. I spent a lot of time as a student following the gentlemen and their brilliance and their commitment to regional integration, the commitment to people, the commitment to people's development. In, you know, you may have people who want to be leaders and so forth, but they may not have the intrinsic commitment. And if you do not have this intrinsic commitment to solving people's problems, you'll never feel people's pain. And you'll never be able to define solutions and projects and programs and policies to addressing those challenges. And so leadership matters. And experience is important in this time we live in. You do not want to have a situation of men coming to try things. There's not a time for trying. You need tried and tested leadership, not people coming to try things. If somebody want to try something, they go out there to one of the lotteries place and you buy a ticket and you scratch it and you try your luck. But when you're dealing with people's lives and livelihoods in this difficult time, you need tried and tested leadership. And I'm not aware of anyone in St. Vincent and Grenadines who can trump Prime Minister Gonzalez's experience and having to navigate so many challenges. So we're here to the number of issues in the region. Of course, the advancement of our integration process, the issues of the Caribbean being a zone of peace, the issues of global climate change. The conference will come up in November that we have to prepare ourselves for and to discuss. There you have the issue of the net zero and shipping, and we just had the IMO conference, in London. That is something that I believe the Caribbean took on too late. But they say rather late than never, because that in itself, while we're seeking to address a particular issue, the reality is this net zero issue is fine. It will help, the environment. But at the end of the day, we at the lower end of the food chain are the ones who are going to be dramatically impacted. And if we are the ones suffering the most from the impact of climate change, we should not be the ones who have to bear the brunt of solving the problem. Of solving the problem. And this is what it would happen. We would find that things are going to be more expensive for us. You're going to find that ships and cruise ships are not going to want to come because it's too expensive for them, make no economic sense to come. And so you run the risk of a way of life being dramatically negatively impacted. And I'm hoping that CARICOM can take a more united position on this matter and to examine this proposal very dispassionately and to arrive at a consensus position on these issues. But there are a number of issues, the issue of security. We still have the prevalence of guns, illegal guns in our communities that are being used to commission crimes and homicides and causing discomfort to many of to the entire communities. And so there are a number of things that we felt that rather than speaking over the phone or having a Zoom call as we normally do, that we come across to St. Vincent and to have a conversation. And I think these things need to be done more often. We're accustomed to doing this. I mean, I've been to St. Vincent many times. The camera has been to Dominica before, and so we've been doing this. But I think we need to take advantage of the opportunities to come and to interact and to see what's happening in St. Vincent. What can we learn from, in terms of our own desire to do similar things, and to share experiences and to share perspectives on things. So it's important for those things to happen. But I'm very, very impressed with what's happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Exceptionally impressed, and I'm not saying so because I'm here in the presence of my colleague, Prime Minister, or because he's my friend and so on. Facts are facts, and one cannot contest the fact that, I mean, between two projects, you're talking about $1 billion. and of course, skillful negotiations and skillful planning. And so we are very happy for the Vincentian people, and we hope that the Lord will bless you, that you can take advantage of these opportunities. My advice to us is to set aside the political divide and differences, recognize that this is but one St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we will all enjoy the fruits of labor. I mean, literally. And therefore we should work together so that we can take advantage of those offerings and to position ourselves to improve our lives through those investments, rather than spending time on social media and talk shows, being negative. Let us sit down with our families and our communities and to see how we can position ourselves to benefit from those things. So, as a young person, what are the jobs that are created here at the port, or the hospital, both during construction and after completion? How do I need to go and do some studies for a year or two in a particular area so that this new position at the hospital, I can fill it? These are the kind of things that I believe that the society needs to engage itself in, and so that we can take advantage of the opportunities, because these things are being done for the people, for all the people, and we position ourselves in this. So I know you're going to elections soon. This is a sixth term. I recall that when in the first term came about, it was a one term. What do you call it? One term papa.
Yeah, one term papa.
Yeah,
Now it's long term papa.
and now it's a too long papa.
Too long papa.
you know, people ask about term limits.
Yes.
We amend the constitution and have term limits, and Gonzalo is too long. I say to people,
Roselle, if they had the constitution, if the constitution had passed, I wouldn't have been able to run now.
yeah. So the
Because it was supposed to be 2 terms. They weren't going to count the first 2, because that was under a different law. So it would have been, I wouldn't have even go for a 5th. Certainly not a 6th. That's how life is. But they wanted to give me a black eye on the referendum. It boomerang.
So you're going for 6th term. It is again on uncharted waters in St. Vincent and Grenadines, and I have no doubt that the people of St. Vincent and Grenadines, the voters, will continue to make a wise decision. There are a number of things that you have to continue, and I think it's important that there's no break. But I'm confident there'll be no break based on what I'm hearing on the streets in St. Vincent, and I'm reading that the comrade is on course to return as Prime Minister of St. Vincent and Grenadines, and I think this will be good for St. Vincent and Grenadines. And so I would like to encourage the young people, in particular, to come out and vote. The idea of we not voting, if you want life to be better, you have to vote. You have to engage. You have to participate. And an important step is being part of the campaign and voting, and ensuring that you have a stake in it. You have a stake in the development of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that you would have represented yourself and your family by voting and making the right choice at the next election. So these are my views, my comments. And so we look forward to continue working with Prime Minister Gonzalez for the next 5 years on regional issues and also global issues. The world is way more difficult now than it was 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. The world is colder now than it was 10 or 15, 20 years ago. There's more nationalism in the world, less multilateralism, and therefore the unity of our people is crucial. You know, we can disagree from time to time, but we all have to sign on to what are the important things we need to do as a society, irrespective of whether we support the political party in government at the time. If something is good, we should have the ability to say it's good. And if something is happening that's happening the wrong way, we should say so, but we should also suggest what is the right way. Um, because we have to be more solution focused rather than just complaining and lamenting on things and not giving an alternative to it and allowing time to pass by. But I'm very impressed with what's happening in St. Vincent. It's the very positive developments. The future is bright in St. Vincent and Grenadines, notwithstanding the global challenges that we all face from time to time. And it's almost look like it's unrelenting, the challenges you face. You did the one issue today, the next 6 months something else comes up. So you always have to be on the move. But the leadership of Prime Minister Gonzalez is exceptional. I think the vision that he has articulated and which is manifesting itself in every sphere of the society, whether it's in healthcare, the economy, people's development, education, you cannot contest this. And I have not heard or seen any convincing alternative. People can, it's not what I want to be. You have to be able to present a case and articulate that case. In Dominica, back in the days, the opposition, you build a hospital with 250 beds, they say, okay, we'll do 255. but it's those kinds of things, nothing profound, and of course, you're building the sport, they won't support it. You're building the hospital, they won't support it. You're building the airport, they won't support it. As a matter of fact, they will do everything possible to see whether they can stop it. In Dominica, we're building an international airport. It's about 1.5 or 1.6 billion dollars, and it's frustration from judicial review, taken by the court, injunctions on this and that, and all kinds of machinations to the right to international organizations saying that we're destroying the environment, because we flattened the mountain to build an airport. I'm not sure how you're going to build an airport in Dominica without flattening the mountain. And so all kinds of machinations, and so it is similar across the OECS and so forth. And so we stand in solidarity as we do in St. Vincent, we do in St. Lucia as well, and I think these gentlemen are in office at this time for a reason, and that reason is manifesting itself in the development that's taking place in these islands. So thank you, Prime Minister, for hosting us, and we wish you all the best. We wish you success at the polls, and we wish the people of St. Vincent and Grenadines the best. These are our brothers and sisters. If you succeed, we succeed. If you fail, we fail. We're in this together. There's no difference between ourselves. There has to be complementarity. There has to be solidarity at all material times, and so I share those sentiments from that perspective, and because this is one country. One country was separated by water, similar to that you have the Grenadines that are separated by water, but it's one St. Vincent and Grenadines. So it's one Caribbean. We have the same challenges, and therefore we have to work together towards addressing them. But thank you again. God bless. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. I want to ask Philip to similarly to speak. Roosevelt said something which tickled my memory, Philip. When, after Compton, about how things are more challenging now than 15 years ago, it's getting more and more challenging all the time. I remember after Compton won in December 2006, came back, took back his party, and you know how he won? Among other things, he told people, I am the magician who made St. Lucia big with bananas, and I will bring it back. Of course, people believe it in the same way that I suspect that people believe Jim Jones and drank a lot of Kool-Aid down in Guyana. Because, it was completely unreal. Because Britain had joined the single European market, joined the EU. And the regime from the 1st of January 1993, and there was a new banana regime in 1993 from July the 1st. And there was a progressive diminution of the preferences and the challenges by Ecuador and the United States before the WTO. And things fell apart. The banana market fell apart, but Compton thought that he could reverse all of that by just saying it. And there are people who actually believed it. So he had been in office a few weeks. So in 2007, we were at the CDB in Barbados. It was St. Lucia's turn to be in the chair. And in the yard before we went inside the room where we were sitting, he pulled me aside. He said, Ralph, I want you to sit next to me. I said, why, Sir John, you'd like me to sit next to you? He said, well, I left this thing 15 years ago, and I come back, and I don't recognize it. The thing is so complicated. So I want you to sit next to me to make sure I make any mistakes. Of course, he lasted another year or so and died. So that the matter is getting more and more complicated. The governance of the country, the challenges are more and more complicated. Some of them arise from the contradictions in the global political economy, conflicts of one kind or another, what's happening in our hemisphere, these devices, AI, a host of different things make business more complicated. And you have to be creative always, and have to be thinking as to how you have to get things done differently and better. And you have to have a patience and a calm. Yet at the same time, you have to have the judgment to know when you must move urgently. And while you have the fierce urgency of now, you must not subject yourself to the tyranny of now, because there are some things you have to wait. And you have to know that. And, the sport, fellow who represent West Kingston here, he used to be at the Water Authority, the water engineer. He said that at a meeting, just as we were starting the port, he said that port could never go on. It's taking place in my constituency, and I rule this constituency, he said. They have to talk to me, I have to approve all the plans. If none of that happens, this thing can't go on. And men on the platform, big sensible men and women were applauding him. And the people were the same Jim Jones proposition now, the Kool-Aid proposition. The port is now a reality. In May or June or July, because there was a declutching issue, a technical issue, these things happen big projects like this, and there's a solution. He predicted that by the end of August, the port would wash away in the sea, it would sink. So all now, so we should have been swimming. This is what passes. This is what passes for analysis. You know, I mean, it's a set of unserious people, very, very unserious. But politics is serious business for serious people. It's you know, it's not something where you just get up and spout off your mouth, or you think it's just fun and you can say whatever you want, and you have some people on social media agree with you. You know, if something is false, it does not matter how many people say that it is true, you know, it still remains false. And if I go on the top of this building with the idea in my head that I'm capable of celestial ascent, that there's nothing called Newton's law of gravity, and that if I jump I will fly, I wouldn't fall. But if I jump and try to fly, I will fall. And because that's the reality. In fact, before Newton discovered the law of gravity, when men jumped, men fell. Newton only explained why men fell. But the fact existed that men fell. So you have these, you know, you have these kind of foolishness which go on, and I hear it all across the region, and we need more than ever sober thinking and clear-sighted analysis, and for serious people to deal with serious problems, and you have to have a framework of thinking and doing things. In the case of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I had articulated that the amended colonial economy had to give way to a modern, competitive, many-sided post-colonial economy, which is at once national, regional, and global. And there are certain basics which you had to do in this. And that is what we have been following, and we have laid the groundwork within that framework. That's the material base. And now we have a sufficient material base to launch off, to go to a first world status. And St. Lucia has that similar thing. Dominica is building the international airport. You take, when people try to do the roadblock, I saw your airport. It's coming along fine. But the three countries which didn't get any airstrips during the Second World War, because with Churchill and Roosevelt, President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Churchill in Britain, they had worked out that they will have airstrips for the purpose of plane lands in warplane landing. So you had yours, yes. Then the Grantley Adams had Sewell, the same place. There was a Coolidge in Antigua. They did the same thing at Palisados in Jamaica. All about, you know. But Dominica, Grenada, and St. Lucia, we didn't have any flat land. Dominica, St. Vincent, and Grenada, we didn't have flat land, because if you were to mow down those mountains, by the time you mow them down, the war done. We're done. So that's why we didn't get any. Yes, that simple as that. The Grenada Revolution helped in a particular stage, and they got support from different places. That was opposed to. And then I came, I did the one here. It was inevitable that Roosevelt has to do his, but the longer you wait, because we built ours for about $750 million. Building yours now for 1.5, because it's, of course, different terrain, different circumstances, but the cost of things have simply gone up. And we got a fair amount of stuff out of Cuba, and we got out of Venezuela. but because of the problems which Cuba and Venezuela are under, they can't quite assist you in the way in which I was assisted by them, different circumstances. No, and Philip, you know, Philip has an interesting situation in St. Lucia. The man who preceded him, every other Monday morning, he was announcing a new project, you know. Every other Monday morning, he was announcing a new project. And you think he could talk things into being. He once had a thing, he was do a Chinese race course down somewhere. You know, he talked to me seriously about how many millions going to come from this. So I listened to him. I say, well, have you done this thing? He said, no, that's a simple thing, and so on, so on, so on, so on, everything. I mean, some of the most bizarre propositions, and he talked about them. And because he talked about them so confidently, for a while, he kind of get by with it, you know, until people cottoned on. And by halfway in his term, the shiners knock off his political ball. And people are just waiting for him to go, you know. Philip, it's your turn.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Thank you, comrade. Comrade Ralph is a fascinating character. I've never understood how his brain works, and what is most significant about him is his memory. Ralph will remember what's the color of a man's socks that he wore in 1997. And if you check, he's correct. Ralph is the only man I know that can quote from the Bible to the Quran and come back to Shakespeare and end up with Derek Walcott. I mean, I've said so to many people, not because I'm saying in front of him. He's the only man I know who can do that. And when I meet foreign ambassadors and they speak about Ralph Gonzalez, they themselves say the same thing, exactly the same thing. I've been Prime Minister for 4 years, and I have to make time to read a book. Ralph has written at least, how many?
Well, since I became Prime Minister, about 14.
Exactly. I've read 2. He says 14. So that means I have a deficit of 12. So that alone will tell you the measure of the man, the measure of the man. And when I came, I worked in St. Vincent for a short while for the CDB doing the consultancy. And I remember you had to drive, you could barely drive around the country. You had to drive one and come back down. Yeah, you could not drive around the country. I remember that. I remember that I stayed at a place called
Cobblestone.
Cobblestone.
Yes.
And when I came, I asked whether it's still there, and it's still there.
It's still there.
Yeah, that's where I stayed. Then when I'm in St. Vincent, and I realized really what has happened. So all that is really due to the vision of Ralph. And I want to say to the young politicians in his cabinet and his party, there's one thing you can learn. The only thing you cannot buy or study in a book is experience. And sometimes you may figure that experience isn't worth it. We live in a digital age, but the experience of being there and understanding human behavior and human nature, and that is paramount to political survival. And if there's anything that Ralph has, is that understanding of people, understanding of how people will behave, and understanding that you must take nothing for granted. So I really have learned a lot and will continue to learn a lot. And that's why Roosevelt and I are here today to to listen to him, to talk to him, to talk about many things. Because our region, we have some challenges. We have challenges. Our sister island of Grenada has some issues to deal with. Most of the recent Lucia, we have serious issues as far as our citizens' security concerned. We have porous borders, and there are things that we have to deal with. We have to speak about it. And coming today, we hope we can find some time to discuss these things. But the projects that I saw, at home I'm trying to complete a hospital that got burnt in 2009. I'm trying 2009, yes. I think that's when, no, that's when, 2011. That's when the 2011, 10, 11, that's when our hospital burnt. And then I'm trying to complete it. And hopefully I'm going to complete it by the end of this year. And I'm here and I'm seeing Ralph will finish his in 2027. So I'm not jealous. I'm marveled to see how he can get that done. I know the story of the airport. When the airport was completed, I was in opposition at the time. Ralph invited me to come over. The Prime Minister at the time came, but I did not. But I was very pleased that airport had been built because I knew the story of the airport, and he tried and he strived to get that airport going. And most people thought it would have been impossible to do an airport where he did it. I remember when I was working there, coming outside, and somebody tells me that, somebody said to me, there's a madman called Gonzalez that he said, put an airport there. I never forget that. One actually told me there's a madman called Gonzalez. I would mention his name, he's still around. That says he'll put an airport there. And he actually stood and showed it to me. He says, there's a madman. And then I happened to land on that airport. So I see.
The thing is actually that airport, among other things, we opened just over a year ago a $300 million sandals. You say, tell me it's better than even your sandals. But what is interesting too, Roosevelt, that's 800 million EC dollars. You're doing quite well. But we have just signed a little further to the west. Beaches of 500 million US dollars. We're doing two phases, 350 rooms first, 350 million US, then another 150. That when they do the first 350, you're going to have, Philip, about 1,400 jobs permanently. When they do the 500 rooms, it's going to reach close to 2,000. None of that could have happened without the venture, the madman. By the way, I know it's telling the truth because they said publicly, Roosevelt, we know mad people don't usually go themselves to make appointments. So we will make an appointment with Dr. Debnat, who was in charge
of the psychiatric.
So that they could examine me, because he said they will take me there too, they will put me in the car and take me there, Go ahead, Philip.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. The guy, I knew him well. He's taking me around, and he said to me, "That's it." So, and I saw the airport, and that's, as Ruth said, that's vision, and that's determination and believing in what and believing and standing for something. So when people they refuse to stand for something, they facilitate. They come from here to there. They don't stand for anything. And the measure of a man is you must stand for something. And if you believe in it, you must stand for it and you must get it through. So St. Vincent and Ralph is an example of a politician who lives by his commitment. He stands by his commitment, even though he gets criticized, even though folks get violent on him. Sometimes he has suffered from violence, political violence. He understands that you must work for it. So I want to applaud him. I want to applaud the people of St. Vincent for being able to have a prime minister like Ralph. I hope that I can do half of the years he's done. 20, 25 years is a lot of years to be a prime minister, and to be like him, to have that memory, to have that understanding, to be able to deal with so-called modern things, and also be able to keep grounded is a fantastic skill and a talent, and I really hope that St. Vincent appreciates it, and to the other people in his cabinet and the people in the government, you have a you have a gem that you must keep, you must work with, so St. Vincent can come to even higher heights. So Ralph, congratulations and wish you all the best.
Thanks. Thanks very much. Well, I think we have spoken a lot. Candyman, if the press has any question.
Yes, so we have Live Compton. Who are you representing today? He wears many hats.
VFM.
Yeah. I don't know if it's WFM, Searchlight, API, I don't know. Which one?
I only found out last night.
Last night, yes.
Because my mother-in-law was 97 yesterday. And she was excited, think you were coming in on her birthday.
Okay. Yesterday.
But you'll see her today. We'll go up and see her. She'll be very happy. The ambassador was there.
My question is to the three prime ministers. I would like to know what advice is, if any, will be given or is being given to Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell in relation to the request by the United States to place radar systems in his airport.
We had a meeting, and a meeting at the Oecs. And then there was a CARICOM meeting, and this matter was discussed. A matter of this great sensitivity, I wouldn't want to say what advice we gave to Dickon, or what issues we discussed. But I could tell you what I said then and what I could say publicly is that whatever decision he makes, I will support him, because he'd have a rational basis on which to make whatever decision he makes. Clearly, this is a complicated issue. If he says no, the United States of America will find somewhere else to put it. They can put it by me?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, I see. Well, they haven't raised that with me. They can put it on a platform in the sea. They have satellites. You know, the argument, as I understand it, that's the best place to put it. My own view is that they want to put it nearby to Venezuela to put some pressure on Maduro. But if I could figure that out, you don't think Maduro could figure that out too? So the effect of the pressure would be lost. That is the intention. Look, take a situation objectively. You can't lift up Grenada and carry it to Vladivostok or the mouth of the Amur River. It's where it is. 20-something% of the GDP of Grenada is in relation to one medical school. Most of the persons come from America. The airlines which bring passengers come mainly out of the United States of America. There are all kinds of pressures which could be brought. And then on the other side, there are principles of non-intervention, non-interference. This is a zone of peace. So I am sure it's not nuclear physics that any prime minister confronted with a request from the United States of America that they will balance and consider all various factors. I can't tell Dickon what to say. I can't tell the Grenadian people what to say. But whatever decision they take, I will support them because it would be a decision which is difficult, problematic, and it's a judgment, and they would look where do they see at this particular point in time the interests of Grenada. There are certain persons who may give advice one way or the other, but at the end of the day, it's Dickon, having listened to the advice of his people, listened to his cabinet, consider all matters, that he will make his determination. And so I will not adopt a posture other than to support my brother in whatever he decides to do. So, but I wouldn't say to you what advice I will give him if he asks me. And that is the way I will put the issue. I will be in his corner.
I don't know if any other prime minister wants to comment on it.
No, we share the same sentiments.
Antigua's prime minister said straight up no. So the three prime ministers said straight up no if that request is made of them.
No,
Well, that's in relation to Antigua.
yeah, Antigua, as I understand it, they asked Antigua.
Yeah. So,
And I support Antigua in saying no. I support my colleagues in a decision which they take, which they themselves assess the national interest of their own country at that particular point in time. It's as simple and straightforward as that. You see, people look at things in a very abstract way, you know. This is a concrete question. And that concrete question has to be determined by all sorts of considerations. And where your judgment comes down depends on how you see things at that particular point in time. And that's why I wouldn't add my voice to denounce anybody who takes a decision which I may not think in my own head abstractly that that's the best decision. And it's the only way in which solidarity can work.
We have three prime ministers here that have a close connection, and you all at different points, probably not today, spoke about the porous borders of the countries. Are there any collaborative efforts in relation to dealing with this crime fighting wise, drug movement of drugs, firearms?
Absolutely, absolutely. We do work bilaterally, our police forces. Right now, my commissioner is in St. Lucia. You all had a session there for a few days. The RSS, we belong to the RSS. We coordinate. The RSS has expanded. It includes Guyana now. We share intelligence. We are within CARICOM. We have the regional fusion center, intelligence fusion center, which is a dimension of the implementation agency for crime and security, CARICOM impacts. And there are routine things which we do. You take any plane which leaves any destination. Within 20 minutes, they're going to land in Dominica or St. Lucia or St. Vincent. We know the names of everybody who's on board. Our security people know, and we know whether there's anybody on board where there's a red flag to be raised, because it goes through a network, a system. That's why we have common laws called the Advanced Passenger Information System. We have it also in relation to cargo. So there's multiplicity of cooperation. But one of the things which you have to bear in mind with criminal activities, and I'm not talking now about America with guns coming out of the United States and bullets and all that. The sources of violent conduct are many-sided. Sources of criminal conduct are many-sided. But at the end of the day, a person chooses to be a criminal. There may be different impulses which would lead him or her to crime, but there's a choice. For some persons, it happens episodically, where I try and do a hustle and I get caught. I get caught up with some people. And there are some who decide, as a matter of a way of life, they're going to be, that's what they're going to make their living doing. I first came upon that phenomenon when I was a lawyer. A man called me one day in jail. He told me he's coming out, but he wants to retain me like how lawyers, like how business people retain lawyers. Because he tells me, he say, Comrade Ralph, I'm a thief, man. I make my money by breaking and thieving. I want to know I can pay you a retainer, so that if I call you in the middle of the night, you'll come, because I say I can't take a retainer from a man who tells me up front that he's going to help. But so so when I talk these things, people think that, as you say, experiences in many ways and so forth. And these problems which we have with apart from the tactical things, to maintain peace, to maintain good living, neighborly conduct, you need to have an all of society approach. Parents are very important. Teachers, people in churches, groups in the communities, a multiplicity of things. A lot of those things have broken down. But we have to get back to building these things more and more and more. So that's how I'd answer you. And we talk about these things all the time, and we have to do better policing, we have to do better border control. We just spent, Carl James has spent 2.5 million US on a container scanner. There was no need from a port standpoint, the operation of the port, for him to do that. But he, as the CEO of a port, he has to make his important contribution towards border security, because that's an important dimension. And that $2.5 million, that is going to help to save lives, because we'll be able to detect guns which come inside of the containers. It's like scanning your body and see what's wrong with you. That's essentially what it is. So when the fellas in Parliament say out of one side of the mouth, you must get scanners and do the thing to strengthen border security, when it came to Parliament, they say no. They say no. You see where I'm coming from. That's why this is a species of bad-mindedness and irresponsibility, difficult to find any common ground with people like that, because all you're then interested in is you're just interested in power. No, let's understand this. Friday is in his mid-60s. Cummins and Leacock about in their 70s, 73, 74, thereabouts. Bramble, who came on last time as a young man, Bramble is in his early 60s. He's a big youth. So you have these. No, could you imagine? You start in politics in 2001, 25 years ago. You didn't even hit 50 yet, and you waste your time, all that time, just talking, and you know, this one, you're desperate because it's the last train to San Fernando. If you miss this one, you'll never get another one. So this is why the fellas are behaving like how they're behaving. They're gone bazardy. And the people must understand this. Look, I talk these things and people laugh. But I'm talking truths. And everybody knows what I'm saying is true. They themselves know it, you know. I get into their head. So I know what they're thinking. And one of the things, let me say this. If you go past early 60s, mid 60s, especially if you're a man, and I'm talking now, I'm talking about our society and human beings. If you basically haven't done much which is distinguished, and you're in your mid-60s, and you're watching the lifespan, you either must have a good family, or you must got plenty of money. Otherwise, one of the things in your head, boy, I wonder if I'm going to end up in poor home. And this consideration in men's head make them desperate, you know. And if you pay no attention to your family, and in a bad way with your family, so you ain't got no family to rely on, and you ain't got no money, and you're going past or approaching your mid-60s, that thing in your head, would I end up in poor home? Would I, when I reach a particular age, would I have to scrunt? Would I have to walk on the road? You know, you can't walk on the road because you're so ashamed. These things are inside of some men's head, you know. And some persons, even when some of them, even when they're younger, they feel at this or that. And they take up politics on the way to where I don't know where. So that is the reality, and I strip those things down naked. That's why some of them don't like me, because I am talking what is the real things in a real world. You are the same. You have them too in St. Lucia the same way, you know. Yeah.
My final question, PM, has CARICOM assessed how Operation Fury, I think that's what it's being called, with the USA, whole Venezuela, USA, has CARICOM assessed how it's impacting the region?
Yes, CARICOM has assessed it. CARICOM made a statement. But what we discuss inside, you don't talk about everything outside. It's a serious security question. One of the things which is clear, Trinidad, Grenada, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines are in the front line for refugees. If you have a civil war in Venezuela, which is what it would be. No. What Israel has done, what Israel did with Qatar, stay in the Red Sea and bomb Qatar, they can do that because they're not, Israel is not looking at regime change. They just wanted to kill some people who they think associated with Hamas or what. No. The plan is for regime change. They can stay out in seawater, further afield, drones and so forth, and bomb this or that place. Venezuela, no doubt, would have some defenses. But if you want to change a regime, you have to have people on the ground fighting, because the government just doesn't fall like that. And so you'll have a civil war. And once you have a fighting taking place there, good people and bad people would leave Venezuela. And a lot of bad people, when they leave because opportunities are there for them to make money in the confusion. That is the lesson. You don't have to, all you have to do, look at what happened with Europe. Look at what happened with people leaving places in the Middle East, going the refugees and from Africa and all the rest of it. And they will go to Trinidad, because they're nearby. They will go to Grenada. And they will reach St. Vincent too. No. Could you imagine? I'm talking about 500 bad man and woman. Could you imagine 100 or 50 bad man and woman from Venezuela come St. Vincent? You know the security problem that is going to create. Huh? I don't know if, and that is why when Roosevelt make the point, the complications, you can't have a man audition to drive the government, to drive the vehicle of the government. If you have a L plate on the vehicle, this is not a time for learners.
And on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap it up. We want to thank you very much for.
You want my brother, my St. Lucian brother, apparently.
You have a question?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry. You wanna take the mic?
I can speak loud enough.
Okay, sure.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. First question on security.
Yeah, I needed to go online, so better take the microphone.
There was a plan amongst Oecs countries a few years ago to move teams of police officers from one island to another to improve experience and exchange of skill sets. What has become of that?
Well, in the case of St. Lucia, when there was an uptick during the time when Kenny was Prime Minister, we had some policemen which come here from St. Lucia and some which went from St. Vincent to St. Lucia, because remember, some St. Lucians were coming here doing some bad things, some from St. Vincent were going to St. Lucia to do some bad things, so that for plainclothes police to be able to see and help and identify. And that has subsided. But there are activities, I could assure you, which take place between the St. Lucian police and the Vincentian police, which I wouldn't tell you.
My last question, because it's been a long day. The OCS has become multilingual. Martinique, Guadeloupe now have observer status. Dominica, St. Lucia also speak Creole. How much will that multilingualism assist in bringing our peoples together? And will it help St. Lucia and St. Vincent in broadening the single market and economy within CARICOM?
I mean, the OECS has expanded over the years, as you quite rightly indicated, with Guadeloupe, Martinique, and of course Saint Martin being part of the OECS as associate members. English continues to be the official language of the OECS, and so this English is the official language. But these countries are part of the Caribbean, and we even before they became members, associate members, there were always trade taking place among ourselves. Lots of people-to-people contact, cultural exchanges, students from the French Antilles coming to our countries on study tours and vice versa. We work very closely on security issues, cooperation in healthcare. So there are a number of things that are happening. Obviously, as you know, these associate members do not participate in any free movement mechanism that we have. So Martinique and Guadeloupe are associate members, but they are part of the European Union. They are dependents of France, so they follow the European Union arrangements, and of course the arrangements set forth by the French Republic. So on the issue of movement of persons, and we do not have that kind of arrangement, but we do have functional cooperation on disaster preparedness, disaster response, healthcare, security, education, cultural exchanges. The list goes on and on. And I think those areas are sometimes even more important than the other areas that we normally speak about, and so forth. So this is what I would say in respect to this. But certainly to have them now, to have the entire chain of islands part of the discussion or sitting around the discussion table was always desirable. And now that we have achieved it, it has certainly enhanced our ability to confront challenges together by defining common responses.
You know, one issue which arises from Roosevelt's answer. The OECS countries, we have a visa waiver to get into Europe for 90 days under the Schengen visa waiver. 27 countries in the European Union. We don't abuse it. Most of us have a visa-free status going into the United Kingdom for up to 6 months. We don't abuse it. In relation to the question you asked, we should be seeking visa-free status in the United States, even for a month. People could go and see their families without having to go and line up and get a visa. You see what I'm talking about? There is not. I'm not saying it should be 90 days like European Union. I'm not saying it should be 6 months like Britain. I know there's a general move across the U.S. for tightening up on immigration, but a request like this shouldn't affect that because we're in a special situation. OECS country is a relatively small population, 650,000 persons. That is part of good neighborliness. So that even though Roosevelt is quite correct about the associated status with which Martinique and Guadeloupe and Saint Martin have in relation to the OECS, we can still get to Europe without a visa. if it's even for a month, people would leave and go, they wouldn't abuse it, especially if they say, well, if you abuse it, you don't get it again, ever. Or for a prolonged period of time, whatever. But a number of people would leave here as our incomes rise, and they're rising, and we become more modern and we become more first world. A number of people don't really want to go and live in the United States. Some people want to go, they just want to go and visit the family, or go and see what New York is like, or Philadelphia, or Miami, or something. So you raise the question, so it provides me the opportunity to address something which has not been addressed before, which makes a lot of sense from my perspective.
All right. I want to thank you very much for coming out and providing coverage. Thanks again to Prime Ministers Pear and Skerritt for joining us today as well. I know they'll be feeling a little peckish now, and I'm sure Prime Minister Gonzalez will take care of that. Once again, we thank you for joining us live for this press conference, and we'll return you to your various posts.
Okay.